Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Like Colin mentioned, we are here to discuss PhD science professional learning. And how that will support you throughout your TCLAS experience. So my name is Tori Swallow, and I support implementation of PhD Science TEKS edition, obviously specifically in Texas. And we're super excited to be here today because great minds were as great minds, and the creators of PhD Science TEKS edition were uniquely positioned to really train your teachers and staff to support effective implementation of the curriculum as, of course, the writers of that curriculum. Our team is made up of current and former teachers, including myself. And so we do try to keep that lens as we develop professional learning, and then, of course, as we deliver it and work with teachers and leaders. And also, of course, we're working closely with our content writing team as far as our implementation success team and our content writing team. We're all working closely together in conjunction with TEA to ensure that we're addressing all of the needs, not only of TEKS, but then, of course, of this TCLAS specifically program. So to start, throughout today's session, you will see this icon pop up from time to time. You just heard a bunch about your TCLAS program requirements. And so when you see this icon pop up, you'll see how we are planning to meet those requirements. And then, of course, a lot of what we'll share will go above and beyond those requirements. So I'll start by sharing the big picture of how we plan to support you, and then we'll zoom in. So to start off big picture here, the PhD Science Implementation Success Team really supports districts and schools throughout your first few years of implementation to ensure success. So our team has outlined phases of implementation, which you see on the screen, that implementers will progress through with the support of our team. The first one being Inquire, that really focuses on the fundamentals needed for good implementation. Then we move on to the Implement phase, which is truly the first phase in which teachers are implementing the curriculum as written, ideally with fidelity. The next phase, in the Investigation phase, teachers focus on moving at a pace and making instructional decisions as a result of student responses, so allowing that instruction to truly be student-driven. And then the last phase, Innovate, really allows all focus on flexibility, where teachers understand student impact through assessment and respond, and start to make customizations based on student voice. Educators will, of course, vary where they begin or how the pace at which they progress through these phases, but by defining what administrators should expect to see in each phase, we are really helping to plan successfully for implementation so that teachers, of course, have realistic expectations as they move throughout these phases. And they'll really provide a way for a district or a region to measure success of professional learning, of implementation support, by documenting teachers' progression through these phases. So let's zoom in a little bit more and talk a little less high level about how we actually do that. So our professional learning scope and sequence directly relates to these phases of implementation. So we support teachers, coaches, and administrators through professional development and coaching, as well as other supports. For teachers, we specifically offer learning labs and professional learning community supports, which I'll talk about more specifically in a second. And then for administrators, we are serving as a partner to really plan for implementation. Our professional learning team, like I mentioned, is a group of former educators. Our team of educators really designs, creates, and leads each session, drawing on experience and expertise to facilitate deep learning about the curriculum and how best to implement it. So let's talk more specifically about each of these, starting with professional development. So PhD Science Professional Development supports educators' effective implementation of the curriculum, of course, and all PD sessions will absolutely deepen knowledge, skills, and understanding of the curriculum. To differentiate what we consider coaching, PhD Science Coaching supports, of course, effective implementation just like PD, but we're working more closely and directly with experienced classroom teachers, and kind of drawing on that. So coaching will hopefully build local capacity for implementation by empowering teachers and leaders to identify collective strengths, develop site-specific implementation strategies. One thing about coaching sessions is that they can be repeated and can be offered multiple times throughout the school year, and we really work to support you in what works for you. And I'll talk more about that again specifically shortly. Learning labs and professional learning community support really provides just-in-time professional learning. So these are short topic-based sessions. They're open to teachers, coaches, administrators, and these are sessions that participants really dig into specific aspects of planning, preparing, and implementing PhD Science TEKS edition. Sessions will provide participants with, of course, key knowledge on the curriculum components and an opportunity to really apply understanding and ask questions, of course, to enhance that success of the implementation. Specifically for leaders, our PhD Science Implementation Success Team works with leaders to really craft a custom implementation plan based on your local needs. So that implementation plan is created at the start of implementation as a collaboration between the partner, your leadership team, as our partner, and of course with someone from our team. And during that planning experience, our team really is there to learn and understand your context, your needs, and that of course equips our team to truly provide a strategic and targeted support recommendation. And of course, once that plan is in place, we'll continue to collaborate periodically to reflect on what's working, what's not working, and continue to customize that plan. So all of these sessions are really designed for new and experienced teachers, science coaches, and school leaders. Ideally, grade level teams and professional learning communities would attend together so that they could continue to learn together after each session. And then, of course, other teachers, art, literacy, math, content area teachers, special education, English language learning teachers as well are always welcome to attend to kind of align and support those efforts. But let's talk a little bit more zoomed in and specifically about each of these sessions. So under that professional development umbrella, we really recommend our launch PhD Science TEKS edition session, module level study, and focus on instructional techniques. And that's actually a series of sessions. So I'll talk about these a little bit more deeply here. So the first session in our PD sequence is Launch PhD Science TEKS edition, and it really introduces new implementers to the curriculum's learning design, the approach to knowledge building, incorporation of hands-on investigations, core text, fine art, and of course, module and lesson components. In this session, participants will have an opportunity to discuss the importance of allowing students to ask questions and drive learning. They discover the role of hands-on investigations in building scientific understanding. Participants will gain confidence in implementing of course, rigorous curriculum that really prizes productive struggle. Participants will investigate how the curriculum helps students to build knowledge. They'll explore how the curriculum teaches and assesses skills, and practice assessing or accessing rather and using the program's resources. So this is truly the most important foundational session that we will tell you to get you started with success. This is where you want to start. From there, we do have a session called Module Level Study, which takes participants through the process to deepen their understanding of a module. And of course, in that, the science that's highlighted and the knowledge and investigation progressions. So participants will have an opportunity to explore the module's content and ideas by diving deeply into the science concepts that it's based on. They'll examine the knowledge and skills that students develop in the module. They'll examine the module's components to see how its investigations and activities help students to build knowledge as they work to explain real-world phenomena. And they'll practice teaching strategies that actually help them to prepare for a module and deepen their learning. And so, of course, this session specifically will certainly help teachers with that module internalization requirement from TCLAS, the TCLAS program. The last PD sessions or group of sessions that I'll talk about is our Focus on Instructional Techniques series, which is actually a 4-part series that progresses teachers from that foundational understanding to a sustaining professional development series. So the first one, Focus on Instructional Techniques 1, takes participants deep into the curriculum structure. It offers practical planning tools and strategies and dissects the nuances of the anchor chart and the anchor model. And so this session, of course, will support teachers in that lesson internalization requirement. Focus on Instructional Techniques 2 explores knowledge building through carefully chosen phenomena that highlight scientific conceptual understanding. So why did we choose those phenomena? How is it really helping students to understand those science concepts? And then, of course, honing on the craft of questioning and effective questioning techniques. And then they'll actually dive deeply into the driving question board and how to facilitate a truly student-driven driving question board. Focus on Instructional Techniques 3 deepens educators' understanding of the content learning cycle and the importance of a coherent series of investigations and hands-on tasks that really allows students to experience science before attempting to summarize in words or drawings. So we want teachers and educators to walk away from this session really understanding why things are laid out the way that they are. It's done with a robust amount of intention, and it's not something that we just want to pick and choose what we teach, but there's a lot that goes on into that, and we want to make that transparent and teachers to feel confident in their facilitation of those investigations and following that coherent sequence. And finally, the Focus on Instructional Techniques 4 session will deepen educators' understanding of the curriculum design. We'll discuss formative and summative assessment opportunities and how to make connections to other content areas. Now on to coaching. We'll look specifically at our coaching offerings and discuss how they'll help to meet the needs of your TCLAS requirements. And then, of course, support your teachers for a successful implementation of PhD Science TEKS Edition. So starting off, we'll start by discussing the student-driven classroom series. In this series, we'll focus on key components of creating and maintaining a student-driven classroom, which we know is crucial to the success of PhD Science TEKS Edition implementation. Specifically, teachers will build a strong foundation for managing and nurturing a student-driven classroom. Then we'll ensure that teachers internalize lessons appropriately in terms of pacing and preparing for a student-driven classroom. And then finally, educators will ensure that students are actually driving those conversations by taking a deep dive into science discourse. Our second coaching session that we'll talk about here is planning and preparing by using checks for understanding. So in this session, educators will analyze the components of a lesson level formative assessment in the curriculum by taking a deep dive into the checks for understanding piece. Participants will learn how the checks for understanding, those formative assessments, can be used to really monitor learning, to drive instruction, and how they'll affect instructional decisions, and then of course help students ultimately build knowledge. In this session specifically, participants will analyze the components of a lesson level formative assessment. They'll learn how those pieces, of course, monitor learning and drive instruction, like I mentioned. They'll understand and uncover how the check for understandings can really affect pacing and guide instructional decisions. And then they'll explore how they can impact knowledge building throughout the module. Next, deliver a lesson collaboratively is another session where educators really collaborate to analyze teaching and learning in their school community. So a PhD science coach will guide a small group of teachers who will co-teach a lesson and customize a selected lesson based on student data. So participants will either co-teach this lesson or observe a co-taught lesson. And the whole group will debrief after the lesson is taught to discuss objectives and if they were met and how all of that affected student learning. Together, we'll decide on adjustments to the lesson that could likely improve student outcomes and, of course, carry those best practices into future instruction. So the goals of this session really are to share a process for professional development so that school communities can use this on their own over and over again. So like I mentioned at the start of this, when talking about coaching, all of these coaching sessions are really meant to build internal capacity. So we're introducing that process so that it can be repeated over and over again. From there, the next goal would be to engage educators, of course, in a collaborative study, analysis, and preparation and debrief of lessons, and then to pass forward a practical way of investigating questions, ideas, and puzzles related to teaching science. Now, let's talk about professional learning for administrators. So PhD science topic-based coaching sessions, of course, not only want to build the internal capacity of teachers, but also of leaders to effectively support implementation of the curriculum. So we'll talk about the two sessions that we really recommend in the beginning of implementation. First is lead implementation for administrators, and it really builds leaders' understanding of the what and the why behind PhD Science TEKS edition and guides leaders to plan and prepare for successful implementation. So in this session, participants will analyze the key elements of PhD Science TEKS edition and the instructional shifts that may be required of teachers. They'll deepen their understanding of the learning design, its research foundation, approach to knowledge building, incorporation of core text and art, and module and lesson components. They'll learn the type of module and lesson preparation needed for successful implementation and plan how to support such preparation. And then finally, they'll develop an understanding of what to expect during your first year or so of implementation. And these outcomes, of course, will support when it comes to implementation planning. And our second session that we really recommend for leaders in the beginning is guided observations for leaders. And this is a session in which selected leaders would participate in classroom observations with the PhD science team to identify trends of implementation, to celebrate successes, and identify areas for improvement. So the way that this session works, before observing in the classroom, participants are equipped with tools, an observation tool, and that will really help focus leaders' analysis of the instruction. The group then moves into classrooms for short observations, and then we'll debrief together about those observations to really, again, identify trends and provide clear and precise feedback, as well as specific next steps for supporting classroom practice. So how does that all come together? Well, there's no one size fit all solution for implementation support. Our team works closely and continuously with you to really ensure that we're meeting your unique needs while maintaining, of course, the integrity of the curriculum that we're so closely woven in with. But I can share a sample plan of how this might go. But again, of course, it can be customized based on needs, on size, and different requirements. So in year one, something we could do is focus on all things foundational. So we'd give teachers and coaches and administrators the tools that they need to be onboarded, as well as internalize module and lesson content, create a student-driven classroom culture, all of these things that we know is crucial for the success for this type of curriculum learning and instruction. So we'd start perhaps the summer before with those initial onboarding sessions, and then kind of hone in throughout the fall and the spring with different coaching and professional development sessions. And then perhaps in year 2, as we progress through our phases of implementation, we'd continue setting classrooms up for success by further refining skills. So we come in maybe for observations, we'd support teacher planning and allow teachers to really dig deeper into their own practice to better differentiate and customize instruction. But like I said, that's just a sample. Our implementation success team is here to work with you regardless of the size, your budget, constraints, and all of those things and factors that go into this. We truly are partners in thinking creatively alongside you to ensure that your needs are met and those solutions are implemented. So as you saw today, you certainly do have some minimum requirements here, but our plan will go above and beyond those requirements, not just to check a box, but to ensure that your teachers and students are truly successful with this curriculum, with PhD Science TEKS Edition. So with that, what's next? What can you do? You can send us an email and let us know you're interested. And we'll blast these emails addresses out in the chat in just a second, but we're essentially ready to start customizing and planning to hear your local context, to hear what's going on, and to customize a plan that makes sense just for you. So I'm going to go ahead and Josh just put his email in the chat. I'm going to throw in the other ones really quickly. And you can certainly reach out to us with next steps and questions and all of that. So be sure to jot those email addresses down or copy and paste them into your own notes. And with that, that is the bulk of what I have for you today. I'm here, of course, I know we have a Q&A later on, but since we have a little bit of time, I don't know if Colin, if we can open it up to questions, if there are any, if that's appropriate.
Yes, the next round of sessions doesn't start till 10:20. So if folks have questions here for around PhD Science and the support for Decision 2, feel free to ask them or drop them into the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I see Josh has put a link in the chat as well for our curriculum's landing page.
And if folks don't have any questions and want to drop, feel free to do that. You can head back to the links that Gloria sent out and choose, maybe peruse what your next session is going to be. That next session will start at 10:20. So maybe if you want to get some 30 minutes back and get some emails answered or whatever the case may be, the next session will start at 10:20. So make sure you head back to that list of links and choose the next 1 or 2 sessions that you might be interested in joining. Those sessions are still in session, so don't click on them yet. But at 10:20, you'll be able to go do that.
And I see Nicole just put a question in the chat. I want to answer it in case you were wondering the same thing. She said, is the next step to schedule a meeting to discuss scheduling professional development? Absolutely. Yeah. So Josh, reaching out to Josh, myself, or Paige there, where you can send any of us an email. And that would be the goal. We would talk about kind of your context, what you're looking for, and we would help to hear those needs and then customize a plan that makes sense for you.
I was going to say, I'll also share really quickly, if your campus hasn't yet, or your district hasn't yet completed the print survey, which is due next Friday on the 12th, that's how you make sure that you get the books so that you can actually teach this in your schools. So if you're planning on implementing this spring and using the services provided by PhD Science, make sure that you include that on your print survey link, which should have gone out to your district or LEA contact last week. So that's due next Friday, just as a flag.
And thank you for bringing that up, Colin. I was going to say, I know we're here with 2A, but when you come to us, we're really here to support you in 2A or 2B when it comes to print materials or any types of questions like that that you may have. Paige and I can also support you along with Tori on any of those pieces. And so, yes, next step would be just scheduling a meeting for a time that works for you. And then we can dive deeper into your district specifics, start getting information, help your district get rostered if you're not already accessing our digital platform. And so you can already immediately access now all of the resources for PhD science that are posted. And then so we can kind of talk through those things with you as well when we start meeting.
And then I see Matthew had a question about implementation for next year. Is there anything different about that process? Josh or Colin?
So for really the implementing next year, we would still really follow the same process. So TA was talking about a spring pilot or a summer pilot, and really those are just opportunities for school districts to really dip your toes into various modules if you wanted to try a particular grade level and kind of get some early implementation experiences prior to the full adoption. Those are really the pilot pieces. But really what we're going to be doing in the spring is really developing that implementation plan that will really kick you off prior to that full onboarding of teachers when they start in August, when we looked at the professional development launch and some of those other sessions. And then what does it look like for continued support during the year? So yeah, so even if you're starting next year, the earlier we can start conversations, the better, just so we can have everything in place and have a really in-depth support on what's happening each semester.
And Matthew has to follow up question. So would he need to complete that print survey at this time if it's not until next year?
No, the print survey is just for spring units. There are lots of print delays right now. So if you don't need them to land in your classrooms in late January, early February, please do not order them yet. We'll be sending out future links for summer and future links for full year Crimsy and other things later on in or early 2022. But for right now, that survey is just for spring Decision 2 orders. Thank you for asking that. So like I said, we'll hang on for the next 20 or so minutes if folks have questions, but otherwise feel free to drop and go peruse for your next session with some of our other vendors. Like I said, that next session will start in about 20 minutes. So yeah, if you want to go back to the link that Gloria sent out, we'll be able to move on to the next session.